All right, well, look at this. It's Mike's Daily Podcast, and I'm Mike Matthews, and this is the show that's been on forever. The longest-running daily self-produced podcast, and it is FF episode 2944, and there is this kind of a sound effect at the beginning of the podcast as we walk over to the door and open up Café Anyway. Café Anyway. Welcome to Café Anyway.
It's Mike's Daily Podcast.
FF episode 2944. 44. Hike. It's Mike.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
If you go to mikesdailypodcast.com, that's my website. There's something that you can see with your eyes versus your ears. That's the way it has to be in the world of that we live in with the podcast, and people gotta have video. Because as you know, radio killed the video star, or was it the other way around? Video killed the podcast star, something like that. Okay.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
The old podcast star that didn't have to rely on video. That one. Okay, my point is
Mike's
the video
Daily
for this podcast is
Podcast.
pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is that keeps smacking me in the face. It's in the video. If you go to mikesdailypodcast.com and you can click on the Facebook link, or there's if you scroll down the page, you'll see a picture of me and the thing that says video, and you can go to that and check it out. See it at mikesdailypodcast.com. To everyone that listens to me do my little things, my little breaks on the radio, I'm heard on KFAX.com and AM 1100 KFAX in the Bay Area. I introduce the little programs that we carry that are have a huge following, cover a lot of places across the U.S. and the world, and are very helpful. And I am the one that introduces them very quickly. I don't say much, but I also will promote little things going on with the radio station. Like if we're doing a contest, we are always giving away books, interesting books of all types, and giving away movie tickets and even trips. So I go in there and talk about that. So that's my little side gig that I do, that I've been doing now since COVID. So yeah, 4 years. Wow, look at that. Time flies. And this podcast has been on for 2,944 episodes, so that's another thing.
And here's today's podcast picture.
All that in the Bay Area, of course. And that's the podcast. Yeah, I've been podcasting since 2007. So something that I would like to tell you about the podcast picture is of something probably, it's going to be the one with Rocky the cat, and his crazy little Shakespeare collar. I know I posted some pictures of that earlier, but see it at mikesdailypodcast.com. It's one with me and him. Are you getting absolutely sick of this election? I think that's one thing we can all agree on. The late great Basil the Boxer would agree with me, I'm sure. And I'm sure right now he is saying peace and love and an eternity of happiness in dog heaven to his good friend. Maybe he's up in dog heaven with him right now. Bailey passed away. Bailey knew Basil for many, many years. In fact, I got to meet some great, phenomenal people through Basil meeting Bailey. I was walking. There's a lot of cool dog trails or walking trails that people walk their dogs on in the mountains of podCastro Valley. And we are in podCastro Valley at Café Anyway, at the last place on earth in the land of Ameritopica. But I met a really cool guy named Owen Welsh. He's been on the Welsh on the World segment that we had years ago on the podcast. I met him. I met his, what later became his wife, and then his wife's cool parents. I've gotten to be good friends with them. And
the word of dog.
Yes, Basil is saying, what a fantastic family that Mike met through him and Bailey. Bailey's owners actually were Owen Welsh's parents. they owned Bailey, and I know they're going through a rough time right now, so my heart goes out to them, and I'm going to definitely go by and see them and offer my condolences and some hopefully helpful words to them, because it is so tough going through the loss of a dog, especially one that you've known. Gosh, they had Bailey for like 16 years. Bailey outlived Basil a good 4 years, so she definitely had a nice long life. The one interesting thing, I don't know if I ever talked about this. If I ever talked about this on my podcast.
Mike's Matthewsman Park.
It's a Matthewsman Park. A Matthewsman Park of emotion.
The front panel will close automatically. Please remain seated at all times.
On this podcast. It's going up and down. Bailey bit me once. Badly. Basil was eating some food, and I had told Bailey's parents to make sure she's inside the trailer. So she was separated from Basil, because I go, Basil is very territorial, as some dogs are with their food. They don't like it if other dogs are trying to get their food. They're, what's it called? Dog envy. Dog aggressive. No, food aggressive. Food something. Basil's a great dog, a friendly dog, except for this little thing. This tiny little thing. So they accidentally... They let Bailey out. Bailey goes over to eat Basil's food. Basil and Bailey get into a fight. And the one thing you never do, and this is my tip, this is what you're going to walk away from this podcast, this very helpful tip, never ever stick your hand anywhere near their faces when they're having a fight. You want to grab their back legs, their back tail. This is what I heard from veterinarians and dog trainers. You want to grab their tail. You want to distract them because they're in OCD locked aggression mode. They can't snap out of it unless you pull them by the tail or pull them by the back legs. Well, Basil didn't have a tail because he was a boxer. It had been clipped before I got him. I got Basil when he was 1.5 years. And I always forgot. I thought you could just grab their collar. No. So I go and grab Basil's collar, and I get bit by Bailey. And I have a nasty scar. Well, I did for the longest time, and I was talking to Owen Welsh tonight about it. And he goes, do you still have that scar? And I go, actually, no. Before Bailey left this earth, she took the scar with her. Actually, there's a tiny bit of a remnant of it. But my hands are so wrinkly now in my mid-50s, it doesn't matter. As we go outside at Café Anyway, where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast, somewhere in Podcastro Valley, and the last place on earth. The land of Ameritopica. What an interesting voice that I have. Anyway, Café Anyway. But the king of interesting voices, well, there's two kings. There's Paul Frees, who you will hear forever, although he's long since left this earth. You hear him forever as the ghost host on the Haunted Mansion, and a myriad of cartoons and Christmas specials and holiday specials that show up every year. And he was the voice of Boris on the from Boris and Natasha and Bullwinkle and Rocky, that one, which Rocky, the cat, is sort of named after.
Mike's out of left field recordings.
Recording everything captures actions that will never again be repeated.
I know it's a little out of left field, but I just want to tell you, on YouTube, Johnny Carson, there's a clip of Johnny Carson interviewing Jack Benny and Mel Blanc. It is phenomenal to watch. I think it was probably taped back in 70 or 71. Johnny Carson was still smoking on TV, which that became a no-no. You couldn't do it. I think there was some kind of a rule. They can smoke if it's a scripted show, but not if it's like a live show or a live to tape show, something like that. So Mel Blanc and Jack Benny had such an incredible, they were like almost like brothers. They were linked. Some kind of psychokinetic link was going on between those two. In the world, a comedy connection is what they had. And Mel Blanc, of course, the voice of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, not Donald. Although he did make fun of Donald Duck
And now we return you to our regularly scheduled program with Mike Matthews.
on the Jack Benny Show. I think, or it might have been another one of those old-time radio shows. Anyway, Café Anyway, what an amazing voicemail Blank had. And Jack Benny. And, of course, Jack Benny, well known for his amazing comedic timing. And he played the violin really well. So that was interesting to see. A little out of left field recording there for you now. But let's get back to, this is a little bit of left wing, a little bit of right wing. We're talking the political process that our nation's going through right now. It is the most expensive election ever. Those ceaseless texts from political candidates asking for donations, they're working. The Wall Street Journal reported an estimated almost $16 billion have been spent on all U.S. federal election races. And this eclipses...
We have to win all the things!
Oh, because they want to win all the things.
All the things!
All the things.
We are warriors!
Thank you, Betty Pringle and, Dwight, right? Okay, this eclipses, it's at 15.9 billion, actually, is what it is this time around. 4 years ago, it was 15.1 billion. The cost reveals a huge disparity between the U.S. and other industrialized democracies. Running for prime minister in Britain this year, Keir Starmer raised $12.3 million on his way to winning. So, about what? Only $12.3 million as compared to $15.9 billion. His opponent, Rishi Sunak, received only $2.5 million. So, Sunak was outspent 6 times.
Mr. President, are you suggesting President Biden's using cocaine?
I don't know what he's using, but that was not, he was higher than a kite. And by the way, it was the worst address I've ever seen. State of the Nation. I'll tell you, State of the Union, that's not State of the Union because he doesn't represent us properly. That I can tell you.
At the end of all of this, when we finally get a result, either Tuesday night, Wednesday, hopefully by Thursday, I'm going to play the very angry parent and sit down his children, aka every single politician, political pundit, that includes all the right-wing radio hosts, all the right-wing podcasters, all the left-wing podcasters. There's really no left-wing radio hosts. They're mostly on cable TV. And everyone that said ridiculous things to try and get you to change your vote or to vote for this candidate or that candidate. So much misinformation was spread from both sides. It's obvious when the dust settles next week, you will see it. I promise you. Well, speaking of Trump, his campaign has raised $800 million.
The Fascinating Material Project.
This is the Fascinating Material Project because Kamala, Trump raised $800 million. She has raised $1 billion overall. In her first 2, I guess this is days, she raised $300 million. 408 Americans have given more than $1 million. Okay, I know there's a bunch of numbers, but let me just leave you with this. $2.3 billion was...
A fine article.
You silly, great, fat article.
This fine article says $2.3 billion was given by 408 Americans. That's 408. 408 Americans gave $2.3 billion to the election, to both candidates. I guess they're not saying which particular candidate of that amount was given to who, but all that information, that fine article came from Rob Black. I produce his podcast. He's heard on AM 1220 KDOW weekday mornings and on Cron Television Monday through Thursday in the 9 o'clock hour. And I have a big fluffy cat on my lap. It's awesome. McDonald's Quarter Pounder burgers returned to 900 restaurants affected by the E. coli outbreak. There were 75 cases across 13 states. It appears, from what I last heard, it was not the meat. I heard it was the onions. So, and this bit, the California exodus has continued. Between 2022 and 2023, and Rocky is on my lap right now. And Rocky, we got you back in 2022. Over 690,100 people left California. That's a lot. Almost 700,000 people left California motivated by economic reasons, including the cost of living and home ownership. They got the heck out of Dodge. And I've done it before. There's nothing wrong with that. I will do it again. Just over 422,000 people
love you, Mike.
Also moved. Thank you. They love me. So you had almost 700,000 people leave. About 422,000 arrived. Yes. You know, everybody's leaving California. Well, that's pretty interesting. You get 700,000 people leaving, but 422,000 moving into the Golden State. Maybe and you know, you hear about it. People moved. I can live in Texas, and they go to Texas and they don't like it. But hey, I've known people that moved from New York to Texas, and they're still there. They love it. They got family and friends there now, and they love it, and they've adjusted to the change because it can be a bit of a culture shock from New York City to somewhere. Well, they moved to Dallas, so they moved to another city, but definitely there's a bit of a difference. So 700,000 leave, 422,000 arrive. And the last thing here was that Newsom, speaking of California,
Woo!
Gavin Newsom announced a proposal to more than double our state's film and tax incentives. Hollywood faces more competition among other states and countries offering similar perks. The Golden State is home to the largest share of the film and TV economy in the country. Film and TV production in California supports more than 700,000 jobs. And a lot of those people probably drink kombucha. It also covers $70 billion in wages for in-state workers. Guess who is gaining share of the TV and film market? New York, speaking of which, and Georgia, because I know they filmed Stranger Things in Georgia. The industry continues to struggle post-COVID and in the wake of labor strikes. So this new proposal will expand the annual tax credit pool to $750 million compared to its current total of $330 million. Look who is here. Hi, Matt. It's Benita the Rodeo Queen. How y'all doing?
Magnification.
What was that? That was the amazing Paul Frees, who actually, well, I was mentioning earlier, he's the voice of the Haunted Mansion, immortalized in the Haunted Mansion. And Johnny Carson name-checked him in that interview that he does with Mel Blanc and Jack Benny, talking about the amazing voices that came out of the 60s and 70s. Well, and Jack Benny, Mel Blanc started his career
into the incredible universe.
Paul Frees again. Mel Blanc started his career in the 20s, so 100 years ago. Bugs Bunny began, and he said that Bugs Bunny was based on a cross between a Brooklyn and a Bronx accent, which my lovely lady friend laughed at because she's from the Bronx. So yeah, he said, I wanted to come up with the toughest sounding accent I could, and he came up with crossing Brooklyn with the Bronx, and it's, yeah, what's up, Doc? That's what you get. But he was Paul Frees was that voice that we just heard. The guy that was also Scrooge McDuck, Boris from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
The Cutting Corners Corner.
That's right, Rocky. Corner. We're gonna do the Cutting Corners Corner.
The Cutting Corners Corner.
So I talked about, and actually that Magnification that we heard, and that you'll travel into the incredible universe was from a ride that no longer exists at Disneyland. It was called the Trip Through Inner Space. It's gone. But it was a fantastic ride. I remember it as a kid. You got shrunk down so small that you would enter a water molecule inside a snowflake. First, you go into a snowflake, which is kind of funny now because there's that political thing about snowflakes, the ones that are like, complaining about everything. But then you listen to right-wing radio and you're like, well, they complain a lot.
Magnification.
They complain about everything. So you get young people complaining about, I don't make enough money. How come my job doesn't pay anything? I'm going to spend all my money on a stupid, not real thing that only exists on a thumb drive or in the internet that now Trump apparently is selling, or he has been selling. That's the thing. Odd. Snowflake. So you shrink down into a snowflake and into a water molecule.
Kids, it's me. Do-Re-Mi the Clown.
You don't meet Do-Re-Mi the Clown on that ride, but I don't know what ride that is. That I want to stay off that ride, whatever that is. But Paul Frees was the voice. He's the person that narrates the ride, as he is also the voice on the Haunted Mansion. So my cutting corners, my little money-saving tip is all those rides are at Disneyland. Don't go to Disneyland. It costs way too much. I watch YouTube videos explaining, the Fast Pass just went up in price. This costs more, that costs more. I'm like, just don't even go. Obviously, they don't want you to be there. They're raising the prices to make it so that it hurts. Ginormously so it hurts your pocketbook. They don't want you to go. So stop going. It's obvious. They've spelt it out for you. It's as clear as it can be spelt for you in big letters. Look who else is here.
Hey, is Disgruntled Fiddle Player tell you what?
What?
Magnification. That's all I wanted to say because that sounded kind of cool.
Uh-huh. And look who else is here. Oh my God, my delicious root beer house right now. Did you see Rocky the Cat?
Yeah.
Do you like him?
Yeah. He's cool.
So you poured me some root beer.
Yeah, drink right now. I'll cut you.
All right. Excuse me, Rocky. I have to have a sip of this root beer. So one of the things they tell you is sarsaparilla is not the same as root beer, but then you have some sarsaparilla and you're like, no, this is the same as root beer, but whatever. Maybe it's raspberry or soot beer. The point is that they tell you to drink root beer if you didn't want to have caffeine, but then they made Barks root beer that has caffeine. So I am a little confused, but Barks root beer is forever immortalized in a Mary Chapin Carpenter song called I Feel Lucky, which I played over and over again when I worked at K-Hay and did the Santa Fe Cafe for 11 years. Across the street, got a burrito and a Barks, she says. Made a beeline for the park. Sky began to open and said, I think you better get back home. I feel lucky. That one. Hey, is that how you sing that song? Let me know. You can call me at this number.
Call Mike at the Café Anyway hotline. Area code 510-228-4640.
And with all things having to do with Mike's Daily Podcast, let's go to the mainframe and hear from A-Frame. Thank you so much for listening. Rocky, thank you so much for keeping my lap warm. And thank the internet for making it possible for people to hear this show. Because if otherwise, I'd have to record it on a cassette and mail out to people the old way. Oh, I knew some guy that used to do that back in the early 90s. Yeah, I recorded a show and I put it on a cassette and I mail it to people. Well, that's basically what a podcast is. But instead of mailing it out to 26 million people like Joe Rogan would have to do, you just record something and put it on the internet. So thank you to all of the wonderful people that made that possible. And thank you for listening. Okay, take it away, A-Frame.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com.
Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com.
See you tomorrow. Bye.